There's no place like home. Welcome to Primary Technology, the show about the tech news that matters. Today, we're going to talk about actually a couple rumors about the Mac Mini, a new redesign, and an M4 chip. Plus, Apple Podcasts is now on the web for anyone to use. A bunch of AI news, OpenAI partnerships with Condé Nast, and a very special personal tech segment. We're going to talk about what's on our Mac desktop. I'm very curious if Jason's going to lambast me on it. But this episode is brought to you by 1Password, and from you, all of you who support us directly. I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Robles, and joining me, as always, my good friend Jason A10. How's it going, Jason?
It's good. It's good. I'm a little worried about you. You look kind of like you're making a hostage video right now, but...
Listen, here's the deal. I'm reporting live from the show floor at Podcast Movement in Washington, D.C. Actually, I'm not at the show floor. I literally booked a booth that is supposedly for podcast recording. So I could be on the show floor, so I could actually say it and it'd be legit. But then I went by the booth yesterday and they were like, yeah, we don't have internet in here and we can't do like remote guests. And I was like, okay, well, that'd been good to know. So here we are in the beautiful set.
Recorded from the show floor. I just want to say, well, actually, technically, there's never been a time when Steven said that we were recording, any of us were recording from a show floor when we've been anywhere near the show floor.
I will say, I actually recorded with Micah Sargent from the Twit Network, and he's on Clockwise a lot. But I recorded with him at the Podcast Movement, like literally on the show floor in the Shure booth, like Expo Hall, all the noise going around. It was one of the Apple Insider episodes, and I actually used Apple's voice isolation filter on both of our audios, and it was incredibly good, like extremely listenable. Like, you know, you hear some background noise when someone like laughs real loud, but actually did a great job. So that was actually on the show floor. This is not. I'm in my hotel room. So.
Appreciate that you tossed the softball movie quote from, I think it's from the Wicked sequel, right?
You mean the Wicked? Oh yeah, I guess it would be a sequel, not a.
Nope, I was right.
Because Wicked is the prequel. that threw for a loop.
Also known as the Wizard of the
Wizard of Oz. Yes, thank you. I will say I'm looking forward to the Wicked movie with. I think it's going to look very good. But anyway, we got some news today. I do want to give a 5-star shout out. We have one 5-star shout out. Keep them coming because we want to give more shout outs. But this shout out is all that matters. Emmanuel Sabwami. And here's why it matters. Because he said battery percentage off, as the Lord intended, and Apple Pencil tip to volume. So he's got my iPad pencil.
Stephen, it was nice of you to use your burner account to leave us a 5.
No, Emmanuel he's a real person, and so keep those coming. Oh, and I do wanted to call out our 3-in-1 charger poll. We talked about what do you have by your bedside to charge your devices. Are you like an all cables guy? Do you have a 3-in-1 charger? I'm going to send Jason a 3-in-1 to actually try. That'll be forthcoming. But Kid B commented in our community that he's got 4 power bricks and cables to charge all the various devices, which, listen, I mean, to each his own. But the poll, not a ton of people, but the poll says 65% of our community, social.primarytech.fm, use a 3-in-1 MagSafe charger on the nightstand. So it seems like a majority uses a 3-in-1. And then next most is 17% for MagSafe and Apple Watch pucks. So just the cables as they go. And then 2-in-1 and then straight lightning cables. So 3-in-1, I think it's winning out in our community. You can keep voting if you want. But
yeah, I'm not at all surprised by this, but I also still don't care. I'm not surprised. And I'm not even arguing that it's not necessarily like a great solution. I'm just saying it's a thing that works, and I'm not going to keep thinking about it. I will use whatever you send me, though.
I just wanted to say, if you have 4 power bricks in a power strip by your nightstand, don't do that. Here's what you should do instead. Get something like this. This is an Anker one. There's lots of different kinds like this. It was actually just cheaper the other day when I checked it. It was like $30 or $40. But anyway, you can get one of these things that has like 4 USB ports, 6 USB ports, and you just plug it into one outlet. And now you can plug all your cables into like a single dock thing almost. I'll put this in the show notes. It's the Anker charging station 9-in-1 USB-C power strip or whatever. So don't live the 4 brick lifestyle. You don't need to do that. At least do this. I'm just saying.
I can co-sign that. That's
all right. Thank
reasonable.
you. All right, very good. I appreciate it. Okay, so we do have some news. We're going to go pretty fast, and because I do want to get to personal tech. And our bonus episode, I want to talk about conferences because that's where I'm at, and I know we've both been to many. And so, but the first thing, Apple Podcasts is now on the web, and so this is something that just launched earlier this week. Actual Apple news. And let me go to my web browser again. So you can go to podcast.apple.com, and you can literally listen to podcasts here. If you log in with your iCloud account, it will sync your Apple Podcast. Like you'll see your followed shows and your up next queue, and you can manage all that. And you can listen right here in the browser. You can even subscribe to shows. So here's primary technology. You can subscribe for bonus content and ad-free episodes right here in the web. And this means you could do it on Windows and Android, although I imagine the Android experience would not be ideal. But yeah, it opens up Apple Podcasts to more users. I know people are asking, like, why? Like, why would Apple do this? Again, if maybe someone works on a Windows machine but uses Apple devices everywhere else, maybe because it's their work laptop, now they can listen to their Apple show, their podcasts in the web. And I think, the subscriptions, I don't know how many we'll get from Windows, but that's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, this seems as though it kind of follows the same. I mean, they just did the maps on the web as well, right? Like,
right, exactly.
This seems like a direction that they are definitely heading. So,
and I think it'll be better too. Like podcast episodes, it is possible they show up in like Google searches, maybe Apple Intelligence searches, and previously to actually link to an episode, it really wanted to open in the podcast app on a device, whether it's your Mac or your iPhone, and it wasn't a great experience if you tried to load it directly in the web. And so this might be better for linking to specific episodes and someone clicks it who doesn't have Apple devices, which is great. It doesn't have all the features. There's no transcriptions, so you can't read the transcriptions. There's no chapters, so you can't access the chapters here, and it doesn't look as nice as the stock apps. But I'm still holding out, and I still think Apple should do an Android app at least, because, again, there's no Google Podcasts anymore. Google shut that down. So the only stock option is YouTube Music, and, people have varying opinions on that. For audio-only shows, it's not the greatest experience. Pocket Cast is on Android, but I think there's room. I think Apple should put it on Android. I think it'd be good.
And I'm guessing that they just happen to know that there are enough people who are including a link, and they're just using the Apple Podcast link. And if you're on a device, like you mentioned, that doesn't have Apple Podcasts, or like even if you're on a Mac, if you're not using Apple Podcasts on your Mac, that's not the greatest experience to click on a link and have it open in that. So I do think it makes sense, and it also obviously makes it, they don't have to develop an app, which is so funny because Apple for a long time was like, just make web apps. And then they're like, no, everything should be an app. And now we're back to Apple's making its own web apps so that like you can run the same thing on other devices and stuff. So I don't know that there's a lot to read into it other than it does kind of make sense. They're just trying to make these platforms that they sort of shepherd available everywhere. And so I don't know. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And one other rumor I want to talk about. This was a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if we want to get into rumors and stuff here. I know that, listen, the iPhone 16 is coming soon. I think that's a rumor that we could safely say is probably accurate. The iPhone 16 is definitely coming.
I was just listening. I was a little bit behind, but did you happen to hear? It was funny because on Gruber's podcast, he had Christina Warren, and he was talking about how the difference between how Apple will talk about software coming in the future, but they just won't talk about hardware. And essentially what he said was like, even if Greg Joswiak was sitting here on this podcast and you asked him about the iPhone 16, he wouldn't even acknowledge the existence that this is a product that is going to happen. Not only would he not tell you about the features, they would not even acknowledge that it's a thing that's coming.
Right. It's so funny. Actually, there was at a past podcast movement, there was some people from the Apple Podcast team at the conference, and the iPhone, it would have been the 14 announcement, actually went out during the conference because it was like a late August conference and the iPhone event early September. And so, I couldn't tell if they knew it was going out because they're not the iPhone team, it was Apple Podcast. Right. But it was very like, hey, look, there's a new iPhone event. Well, they wouldn't even say iPhone event because they don't like
Yeah,
even
they
the
doesn't
event.
say that that's what it is, right?
Yeah, it's always very like there's an Apple event. We don't know, who knows? It could be
Anything.
It could be new rechargeable AA batteries. The
It could be the fifth Apple Pencil in the lineup. Who knows?
that's what we need. So I've on this show, we've talked about rumors in the past, but my personal feeling, you can tell me how you feel about it, but I think it might be useful and or fun, like much closer to things coming out. And basically, I think the most accurate rumor person right now is Mark Gurman. If he says something and it's usually like a week or two before an event, like he's been pretty spot on. Like the whole M3 event where we got like the M3 Pro, M3 Max, like he nailed all of that. He called that all those chips would be coming out at the same time. And so I think once we get that close to an event, it's useful to talk about it. But otherwise, like it's just, sometimes it's fun, if it's a new product. Like there's been rumors about the HomePod with a screen. More of those rumors came recently, but also we've had those rumors for like years. Like I've talked about it for years. So this might be controversial. I don't think of it as news so much as just kind of like fun to talk about sometimes. I do think it's useful if you're trying to advise someone whether or not to upgrade right now. Like if someone was saying, like I have a video on my YouTube channel about setting up your iPhone. It's like an hour-long video. And I have people commenting now like, yeah, I'm getting a new iPhone next week and I'm going to watch this video again. And I'm like, oh man, maybe don't do that. Like maybe wait. But also most people, most non-techie people, maybe they don't care. So I do think maybe rumors are useful if you're trying to advise someone, like maybe wait, maybe don't buy a Mac Studio today because there might be an M4, something like that. But I don't know. What is your general feeling? Because you write, for Inc.com. I don't know. Yeah. Have you ever covered a rumor there?
Okay. So a couple. First of all, Steven,
well, go ahead. You go back.
Steven clearly has post-traumatic rumor disorder. Like he is very like. It's just a thing where you've had to like exist for a while.
Yeah,
I mean, recognize that.
But it's so hard too because I feel like in the last 4 or 5 years, like the random Twitter users who will post things, it's very difficult. And then there's other like Majin Buu or whatever, and some that are love to dream, and like sometimes they were accurate, sometimes they posted actual pictures of devices, but it was just so hard to tell like what is legit. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't really care much about iPhone rumors, to be honest. I don't care about like the specifics of like, oh, there's this camera thing or this, because I do think on the one hand it does spoil the fun just a little bit. I'm not faulting the people who report the stuff necessarily. I'm just saying it doesn't matter to me. I think like for me there are things that are interesting. Like for example, the one that we didn't cover that I think you were sort of alluding to. Yeah. I thought it was interesting because it's about a product that just hasn't been updated, and it's like, oh, maybe they're actually going to do something interesting with this product. And so, like to me, I think those are two totally different categories. One is like chasing down every feature and spec of a thing that we know is coming, and the other one is like maybe Apple's rethinking a thing. That could be kind of cool to talk about what that might mean, even though we don't know like exactly what it is. And I don't care. Like I don't care about the iPhone rumors because I'm just going to buy it. Like it makes no difference. Like whatever. Well, they added another button for the camera. Okay, good. I was going to buy it anyway. Like that's not a deciding factor for me. And now, as far as for writing, I definitely have written about, I guess you could call them rumors, but generally I will cover something if there are enough reports about a thing and I think that the outcome is interesting enough. So like, technically speaking, I wrote this morning I wrote a piece about, it's not tech related, but it's about how Starbucks' new CEO is going to commute 1,000 miles from California to Seattle because he doesn't want to move to Seattle. Now, like he didn't come out and say that. Right. But his offer letter includes a bunch of this information. So I'm writing about these reports and basically saying this seems like a dumb idea because it feels like if you're a new CEO, you should like go meet the people. Anyway, but in that case, it's like Starbucks didn't come out and say this is what we're doing. So I guess technically it's a rumor. But my point is like I feel like there's an interesting lesson there. So I think the same thing applies with hardware. It's like I think some things are interesting enough to talk about like, I wonder what Apple's thinking about here. Right. Yeah. They're going to put a camera button on the iPhone. Yay.
Well, I think back to the iPhone 14 Pro, where we were going from the notch to the dynamic island, and that was like some of the biggest rumors back then. And it was like, is it going to be a long pill, or is it going to be a small pill and a hole punch? Like there was rumors like at both. And ironically, if you look closely at your 14 Pro
Both.
or your 15, it is both. It is both because like underneath the glass is a hole punch for the camera and a small pill for the speaker.
Yep.
But when you have the screen on, it's a long pill because Apple like wants to obscure that little gap and make it look like a solid island. So it's dynamic.
Mask out the pixels. Yeah.
Right. So like in that sense, like it was interesting because obviously people had seen the hardware or maybe had seen it on, but there was so much confusion because it was like, how is this going to work? So like I understand like that could be fun, but anyway, there's lots of rumors about the iPhone 16. We'll talk about them when we get closer to the event because we don't even have an invite yet. You know, we don't know when that's going to happen. But one rumor that has interested me because I'm probably going to buy this thing. This was Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg talking about how Apple's going to update the Mac Mini probably by late 2024. So that's what we're approaching, fall 2024, with the M4 chip. So totally skipping over the M3 chip generation, which I remember there's been some like 3 nanometer processor issues, and Apple really wanted to get past that kind of M3 line. So go directly to the M4, but that it'll also get a major redesign for the hardware, smaller, maybe even like half the size or, maybe like a big Apple TV size. But anyway, it'll be a smaller Mac Mini. And I just want to say I'm probably going to buy this thing pretty hard because I have.
What does that mean? You're going to like literally throw your credit card at the person at the counter? Like,
when I Apple Pay it. When I Apple Pay it in the App Store app, I'm just going to click it so hard. I'm going to click that side button so hard.
YouTubers say smash the like button, but Steven's going to be over there smashing the buy button.
Smash the buy button. Because, it's probably going to be very reasonable. Like, I think, what does the Mac Mini start at, like 600 right now or something like that? Like
at the most, yeah, I think that's true, yeah.
So M4 chip, which is probably going to be amazing for that price. But also, I have a Mac Mini still running. It's an Intel like i5, which just makes me just irk. But it's running Homebridge for like a couple devices, and it's running my like. I can't say it because this goes on YouTube, and last time I talked about it, they like told me it went against community guidelines, so I can't talk about it. But I have an elaborate system for getting videos to my kids' devices so they can watch it. That's all I'll say. If you want to know more, I'll put a link in the show notes about it. But so that Mac Mini just stays on all the time to do that, and updating the OS like it's kind of slow. So yeah, I'm gonna get this for sure.
And just to be clear, it's not the videos that he caused the community guideline violation. It's just the system of maybe how you're sharing. That's what
yeah. I can't say anymore because
this is my favorite thing. It is so early.
I don't want to get a strike.
People don't even understand. So listening to Steven trying to wrap his brain around whether or not there are words he could use to describe a thing that he's not going to talk about. Back to the Mac Mini.
What? Back to the Mac Mini. No, I think it'd be great. Great redesign. I mean, it had the same design for what? Like, aside from turning space gray, it's had the same design for over a decade.
Like 14
maybe?
years,
more,
something like that.
14 years. Yeah, because wasn't it like the white plastic originally?
Well, that was the Apple TV originally. Was the white plastic.
The first, I'm gonna find it now. Go ahead, you talk. I'm gonna find the first Mac Mini.
Go ahead, you talk. This is how podcasts work.
That's right. I need to buy me some time.
Where's the hand button that I can push to raise my hand to say I want to say something? Does Riverside have one of those? Because really
no, we should do that. Okay, never mind. You bought me enough time. This was the look. This was the original Mac Mini.
All right,
it was the white plastic, had the super drive on the front.
Did you just generate that with Dolly or something?
No, there's no generation. No. The Mac Mini. Look at this thing. Look at all these ports on the back, Jason. This has, why is that picture so small? This has like the DVI VGA port, 4 USB A's, headphone and microphone input, FireWire. Is that 400?
I think it even has like the Kingston lock port on the back.
It's got the Kingston, the security slot. So no, this thing was legit. This was the first Mac Mini plastic. So anyway,
I can't believe there's not a FireWire port though. I'm kind of disappointed to be honest.
There is. It's right here. It's right here.
Okay.
It's next to the Ethernet.
Yeah, FireWire 800. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I was expecting a what is the RJ45 like the telephone jack for the modem.
That'd be pretty amazing. No, I think that the Mac Mini is such an interesting product because it's like, I don't really know who the market for it is other than people who want like the most inexpensive desktop that you can get for like to run Mac OS, because I think that most people would just buy an iMac, right? I mean, although Apple has not given a ton of love either, but like Apple clearly knows some things about this. And for the people who really use Mac Minis for those interesting little use cases that you just described that we can't talk about, having a smaller, form factor really does make sense. And it is kind of silly that it still has this huge form factor, because the only reason for that form factor in the past was running an Intel chip is so you could put a fan in there, right? But the M3 or the M2 doesn't have a fan. There's no reason to put a fan in it. There is no fan in this thing, so you don't need all that extra space. I guess maybe the M2, you can get it with the M2 Pro. You can get it with an M2 Pro.
You can get it with an M2 Pro.
In that. So I don't know. But I just feel like, I think it's interesting because I'm glad they're keeping the Mac Mini around. Yeah. I think it's really interesting that you can actually get it with like an M2 Pro at this point. So maybe they will also include an M4 Pro or whatever. That's a pretty robust machine for a lot less money than a Mac Studio. So I think that's really interesting.
The port situation will be the interesting part, because right now I think the Mac Mini has
USB-C ports. That's it. 2 USB-C. That's it. One for power and one for your monitor. That's it.
I mean, yes, it's not enough. I mean, it'll have probably an Ethernet jack and a headphone jack, but yeah, that'll probably be it. Which, it's not enough.
Well, what
that's
why
I
like
my
now? It'll probably. I bet you it'll have a similar lineup to whatever the M2 version has now. Don't you think? Like, I don't think the only reason to reduce them is for the size, but you're still going to have a HDMI, and you're still going to have probably like 2 USB-C. I don't know if you'll have USB-A. That might be what you lose, but we're at the point where the only thing I have with USB-A on the end of it are lightning cables, and I'd like to get rid of all of those. So,
okay, so here are the tech specs for the current Mac Mini. I'll pull this up here. If you get so you get 2 Thunderbolt ports, HDMI, 2 USB-As, and Ethernet. So that's
pretty. Really.
The M2 Pro, you get 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports. So you do get more ports with the Pro model.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I bet you if they can, they're going to keep that same general port distribution. Maybe they just lose the USB-A. I don't know.
USB-A, maybe the HDMI. I mean,
yeah, but the original, the only thing I disagree with you on that is the original rationale for the Mac Mini was bring your own monitor and keyboard.
Yeah. Most people, they probably have an HDMI monitor and would want to just swap
You're not running Pro Display XDRs if you're buying a Mac Mini. Like, that's just not the situation.
No. Studio display, it's a good combo. Mac Mini Studio
it's a great
display.
combo, but it feels like completely out of balance, right? Like, it feels like the thing's going to tip over. You spent $1,500 on a monitor and $600 on a computer.
But you could use that monitor for decades. Well, I don't know about decades. I mean, I've seen
it's been around for decades. The panel has, so yes.
That is true. The Apple Cinema display, I mean, people use that for a long time. Like,
I have one of the aluminum ones in my basement still. And if it was Retina, I would still be using it today. I loved that. That was my favorite monitor of all time.
That's the thing. Well, like my studio display now, like that's probably going to be just fine for a while. Like I'll probably upgrade my Mac Studio if an M4 Ultra comes out sometime, but no desire to upgrade the monitor, which of course Apple doesn't have a new studio display. Like there's nothing to upgrade to, and I'm not getting a Pro display.
$4,000, Steven, so I don't think it's worth it.
$6,000 with the stand.
Well, that's true. You your studio display off the stand and put something else on it.
Yeah. I do have a Visa mount, but I don't know if I would trust the cheap Visa mount that I use for my studio display with a $5,000 Pro Display XDR. But
fair
anyway.
point.
Yeah. So those are Apple rumors. We'll cover the iPhone 16 rumors coming soon. But one more before we take a quick break. So Sonos, Jason, I don't know what Sonos will be doing over there, but apparently in a Reddit AMA, the Sonos CEO, Patrick Spence, said, actually, we know everybody hates the new app, but we can't downgrade back to the previous app for reasons. So sorry. And this was interesting because, one, the Verge reported previously that Sonos was considering just reverting to the old app. That's not something Sonos, confirmed or said anything about. The Verge reported that they were considering it. So the CEO kind of confirmed it that they were considering it because he said, actually, it's not possible. And it boggles my mind. Do you know how big Sonos is as a company? How many employees? I have no idea.
I don't know how many employees they have. No,
they're a long-standing, like pretty. I don't know. I would think a pretty significant, kind of substantial company. Just I would think. I see their behind-the-scenes videos of like making the Era 300, and they have like labs and stuff where they test this, and they work with like professional musicians. And I'm like, how did this happen? I would love for Nilay Patel to get the CEO on Decoder or whatever, and just like ask him like, what happened where this went out the door, the Sonos app, to such disdain and brokenness. Like, I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if I remember correctly, Sonos as a company, the size of the company, not the number of employees, but like the value of the company, is about half of Bose. Okay. So that puts it in good context, right? Because those are very similar companies. Now, Bose has been around a lot longer, and Bose also makes a lot more different types of products like headphones. I mean, I understand Sonos just got into that game. So I'm not a Sonos person. I have a lot of respect for what they make. I'm not opposed to Sonos. It's just like I haven't like fallen down that rabbit hole yet, and I'm just trying to avoid that as long as I can, because it will be an expensive rabbit hole. I know, but so I'm not personally like I don't have like firsthand experience in what people are missing from the old app versus the new app. So I'm just looking at this as like an overall the experience that you're providing to your customers, and all I know is people are totally not happy about it.
No.
And they are living in that really, really difficult place, which is like, we see a better future. We got to go through some stuff. We got to wander in the wilderness for a little bit to get to the promised land. But the thing is, they're at this point where they have not given a reason to their customers to go with them, right? They're all like about to stand on the far side of the Red Sea, and they're like, nope, we ain't going. Sorry for adding all of the biblical
going
references.
hard with the biblical references.
But
today.
I think people can understand what I mean by that. They're like, that's where their customers are at. They're like, we don't see it. We don't see the benefit that you think is going to happen. So what my point there is that I feel like the real problem that they have, like they have a tech problem, right? Because the stuff just doesn't do what people expect it to do. But what they really have is get out there and explain this to your customers' problem in a way that they can understand. Because when you change something, right, you owe it to your customers to explain to them what the benefit's going to be, and like give them that like hope. So just to round out the biblical references there. So I'm just saying, I just feel like the real issue that they have is, yes, the new app is bad. It doesn't do things that people want. Either solve that problem, or you better do a much better job of explaining to people like why it is that you needed to do this. Because if I understand correctly, and again, not a Sonos person, the main reason for launching the app had a lot to do with the headphones. And the headphones I think most people who have spent the amount of money you have to spend on Sonos stuff already have a $450 pair of headphones, right?
Fair.
So those headphones, you're really talking about like an entry point for new people that like, hey, you don't have a pair of $450 headphones, and you also don't have any Sonos stuff. Buy these instead, and then maybe you'll buy other things. And for those people, they have no history with the app. That's fine, but you cannot leave all of your existing customers behind when you do that. There you go.
The customers that built your company, for sure. So anyway, I just AirPlay to my Sonos speakers, and that's fine. I don't even open the Sonos app.
I just AirPlay to my HomePods, and they're also fine.
I will say the AirPlay to Sonos is not as good of an experience as the previous app was, because the AirPlay is like kind of slow. Like I can click several speakers, and like it'll take a few seconds. The music will start playing, and then if I want to like adjust volume on one speaker individually, I can like drag the slider a little bit. I let go, and then the slider like jumps back, and I gotta wait a second, and then you'll see the slider kind of just phantom move where I had put it originally. So the AirPlay to those is not ideal. Like the HomePods, I think, are more responsive in that way, but it works fine.
It works fine for me. I have a 2011, I think it is, Bose SoundLink Air. You can't even buy the thing anymore. You can't even update the firmware anywhere. Bose will pretend like they never made it if you ask them about it, because like it's just like, this is obsolete. It's an AirPlay. It may not even be AirPlay 2. It's probably AirPlay 1. It works every time. It's like 13 years old, and it works every time, and it sounds amazing. And it's like, that's the bar you have to get over, Sonos, is this thing that is 13 years old. I just say play to the Bose thing, and it just does it every time.
It does the thing. I'm curious. I've heard the ATP guys talk about this a lot. Do you have a shower speaker? Do you do that?
I don't understand the shower speaker thing.
I don't.
I mean, I will say there have been wanted to listen to something and I'm multitasking, and so I'll just take my iPhone in the shower because it's waterproof and just set it over on the little thing and listen to stuff. But I do not have a separate. I did not buy a $400 Sonos Roam or Move or something to put in the shower.
I've not done that yet. I did buy one of those like $20 Bluetooth speakers that has like a suction cup on the back. I did this a long time ago, and like it sounded terrible. The connection was not great. I never wanted to charge it, so I don't have that anymore. But I have thought about a shower speaker only because my work generally does not enable me to listen to podcasts while I work, because I have to listen to the videos I'm recording and I have to edit, or I'm literally recording. And so I've thought about maybe shower time can be more podcast time. And I have a Sonos Move. Like I could drag it in there. Man, that's a big speaker to just play a podcast. But I don't know.
What you really need is what I have, which is a kid who plays a sport that requires an hour and a half driving each way to practice, and then you have lots of podcast time.
That's true. We do have a half-hour drive for dance and stuff. So, but anyway,
there you go.
We have some other AI news, OpenAI and Anthropic, but we actually have a sponsor this week. And so we are glad to say that this episode is brought to you by 1Password. Now, this is not the 1Password you might know as far as like on the individual level. This is 1Password for like top-end security. And so, if you work at a company and there's an IT and they have a lot of rules for the devices that you use in the company. I've worked in places like this where there's lots of devices, company-owned devices, and when there's restrictions put on those devices, people find a way to get around them, and people find a way to do what they want with their devices. And a lot of times that brings security, it opens the door to security issues and privacy issues, and in general puts the company at risk. So here's what you do. Most of the time, security tools work when the employees do everything they're supposed to be doing with the tools. But a lot of security problems take place when people take shortcuts and try to get around those. So 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all these unmanaged devices, apps, and identities under your control. It ensures that every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. 1Password Extended Access Management solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM, or mobile device management, can't. It's security for the way we work today, and it's now generally available to companies with Okta and Microsoft, Entra, and it's in beta for Google Workplace customers. So this may be for not you personally, but a company you work for. Maybe you got an in with the IT team and you want to, hey, here's another tool that might keep our company devices more secure. You can send them this link. You check it out at onepassword.com/product/XAM, Extended Access Management. And that's onepassword.com/product/XAM. That link will be in the show notes as well for the sponsor link. Send that to someone, or if you run the IT at your company and you're looking for another tool to up the security and make sure that everyone's devices stay private and secure, recommend 1Password Extended Access Management. Again, that link is in the show notes. Our thanks to 1Password for sponsoring this episode. There you go. 1Password.
Yeah.
I still use it in the enterprise setting, like for Teams. It's 1Password is very good for that. Just want to say,
Steven, I did a thing.
You did a thing.
I put the 18.1 beta 2 on my main iPhone.
Your main iPhone.
One.
You're burying the lead. We're 40 minutes
hold
into
on.
this episode.
Yeah.
You okay? Okay.
I'm saying this in response to the 1Password thing, because I have been a big 1Password fan, and I'm still a big 1Password fan. But I would be really interested to see because my problem was using the second device with it on there. Didn't even have cell service. It's like, I never am using this. I'm going to do this. I have to be having it on my main device.
That's right.
Battery life be damned. It's fine. But I'm going to have to figure it out. So anyway, I'll be real interested to see how the two play together, because I still use 1Password for my personal stuff. And I'm just really interested in doing a A/B comparison with the password app. So that's my only reason for telling you that I did that.
No, that'll be interesting to hear. But that's wild. I've actually found battery life to be pretty good on the beta 2 of 18.1.
Yeah, I figured beta 2, it's pretty safe, but I know that there will be some apps that that's the thing about it, is there will just be some apps that don't work super well. But I did spend enough time testing the apps that I use on a regular basis. I think that they're mostly fine. So,
yeah, the one app that gave me trouble in the beta 1 was the PlayStation app. Whenever my son requested more time, it kept crashing. I said, sorry, son, I had to run the beta.
It gave me a lot of trouble too, but that's because I don't have a PlayStation. So it was like, what are you doing? So
yeah, exactly. All right, let's run through some AI news. OpenAI is making more deals with publications to include their data in training and in search. So Condé Nast has signed a deal with OpenAI, which includes things like the Atlantic, in addition to companies like the Atlantic and Vox. And so the Condé Nast deal includes the New Yorker, Vogue, Vanity Fair, Bon Appetit, and Wired. And OpenAI will be able to use that data in ChatGPT queries and also the Search GPT prototype. So interesting, in contrast to other AI companies who are being sued because they have not sought these deals out. But it seems like OpenAI is trying to go about this, the most, I don't know what to say, upstanding, but the most reasonable way possible, trying to actually get permission to use this data. Did you join the wait list for Search GPT? Just curious.
I have not yet.
Okay.
I have not yet.
I joined it. Yeah.
Probably should, but I was still on the wait list for Apple Intelligence, but not. It's fine. It was actually weird when I added it to my main device. It's like you're already. I didn't have to join the wait list. It's like you're already on the wait list, and like 7 seconds later, it's like Apple Intelligence is here. It was like really a weird thing. So I don't know if it just knows based on my Apple ID, but I think one thing I wanted to correct is OpenAI is actually one of those companies being sued by the New York Times. Like that's the biggest lawsuit in this is that OpenAI.
Yeah.
And I think there's an important framing that people should get. These deals, it is so interesting, the incentives on the two sides, because for the publishers, this is not an editorial decision. This is not like, let's give more exposure to our stuff. This is purely a business decision, and it shows you the difference between the business side and the editorial side of most publications. Because the business side is essentially saying, our industry is doomed. Let's just get whatever we can while we still have an opportunity, right? Because that's really the case. And it's more than just OpenAI, but on the AI companies, this is basically just don't sue us money, right? Because they've already done all of the scraping of all of the content. Now, obviously, they haven't scraped new content, right? If I write an article today, it's not going to be in any of these models. But this is essentially like, yes, let us use it in the future, but also promise don't sue us for what we've already done. Because, I mean, that is the, like, did you see that Eric Schmidt thing, the former Google CEO, who basically said, like, if you're a startup AI company, what you really should do is just go out and steal all the stuff and then hire a bunch of lawyers to clean up the mess.
Yeah.
And the thing is, literally, that's the story of what Google did. And it's also the story of what a lot of tech companies did. And we are now in the hire lawyers to clean up the mess phase of AI. And this is what this is. The lawyers are like, go out and make deals with all of the people who might sue you. And then it'll be cheaper because you won't have to pay the lawyers as much money to go through the lawsuit if you're going to end up settling them anyway. So I think as a user, this stuff is great because you're going to have access to more content when you use these tools. For the publishing industry, this is mostly terrible. It's a little bit of money now, but you're basically just buying your own death, which is a weird thing to think about. For the AI companies, this is like brilliant because again, you're just like paying some amount of money now to get access to the stuff that you've already basically been using anyway.
Right. And I'll put an article for the Eric Schmidt quote because it was wild. He was basically saying, just steal all the stuff, and if you make something that no one uses, then it doesn't matter because no one will come after you because you don't have a big enough product or company for people to care and you're not making any money. But if your product does blow up and makes money and is big enough where people want to sue you, well, you should have enough money to hire lawyers to like fight them off. And it's like, that's insane.
Yeah, he's basically saying the strategy for success is steal a bunch of stuff and build on top of it. And if it doesn't work out, who cares? Like you did a bad thing, but no one will come after you because no one cares because your product failed. And if you do succeed, oh man, you might have a target on you, but you'll be so successful that and literally this is the story. Like this is the guy who ran Google. Like he ran Google and he was the adult in the room. He was the adult supervision, right? Like, and yes, it's so funny. You know what the best part about that quote is? That he looked at the camera afterwards and said, this is off the record, right? Or not right, but he's like, that's all off the record. And it's like, no, it's really not. It's being recorded.
It's being recorded.
Somehow he made them. Well, I mean, it's probably not so hard for the former CEO of Google to get something taken off of YouTube, but it did. The video got taken off of YouTube because he realized this is a pretty bad look for the guy who used to run Google and is still pretty associated with it.
And then, at that point, Eric Schmidt said to the camera, "And do not quote me." This is quoted in the Verge article, and he says at this point the interviewer said, "You're on camera," which is just wild. But a side note, I did sign up for the Search GPT waitlist, and they had like an initial email go out saying like some people have made it. I did not make that first cut, so that was that.
Do you think that you'll get an invitation to the iPhone event first or to the Search GPT list? And which one would you rather have? And I know that there's actually one answer. There's only one answer.
I would rather the iPhone event, but I'll probably get a Search GPT. I'll probably get access to that first.
Okay.
But I'll just say. So anyway, in addition to other AI company news getting sued, this is Anthropic, which is the Amazon-backed AI startup. They're getting sued by a California federal court because several book authors said that Anthropic was trained on a bunch of books, including these particular authors' books, and obviously they didn't give permission for that. And so Anthropic's getting sued.
This is basically the same thing as what the New York Times is doing, essentially, right? They're basically saying you took all of our content that's copyrighted and you are using it to train your models, and we didn't agree to that, and we aren't getting anything from that. And essentially, what the argument is that the copyright law prohibits what they're doing. They've literally downloaded and copied hundreds of thousands of copyrighted works. Right. And they just and in their case, these works were often taken from illegal sources in the first place. So the authors are arguing like someone stole my book and put it on a website, right? Like just published the copy of it, and then you scraped that, and you think that that's okay. And Anthropic's argument would probably be like, well, we're just reading the stuff that's already out there. We're not the ones that stole it from you. But you still made an illegal copy. It's just so like messy.
All of this is like the ultimate if a tree falls in the forest. Like Eric Schmidt's quote is basically like, if a tree falls in the forest but no one hears it, you didn't break the law. But if someone does hear it.
What he really says is if you go and cut down all of the trees in the forest and no one hears it, you didn't do anything wrong. But if someone notices, just give them some money.
Right, exactly. And I will also point out that Universal Music sued Anthropic last October because of lyrics. And they were saying they asked the Anthropic AI chatbot, whose name is Claude, about the lyrics to Katy Perry's song Roar, and basically generated an almost identical copy of the lyrics, which is copyright. Yep. So,
the argument is you couldn't possibly have created an identical copy of those lyrics if you didn't also have a copy of those lyrics that you were not allowed to have. So
exactly.
I mean, this is like, just to be clear for like our listeners, this is the fundamental thing that will change the direction that this AI stuff heads, because either the entire business is founded on massive copyright violation, which is probably the case, because otherwise why is OpenAI going out there and making all these deals, right? Or it just doesn't matter, and courts will be like, nope, this is all fair use. What you're doing is just like transformative, which I don't think is the case, and I don't think that that's what a federal court. But one way or another, either the enormous potential of these AI companies is going to be dramatically diminished, or the value of the works that we make as copyright holders is going to be just obliterated. One of those two things, they can't both be true.
Yeah. And I think OpenAI has enough momentum now and has made enough deals where I think that's probably the future. Like there will be deals made, and like, if you have a personal website, like your recipe website, like obviously OpenAI is not going to make a deal with you. They're going to steal your content, and like they know most people that have like at that level don't have the funds to like take OpenAI to court to sue them over that. So I think that's probably
I think you're right. Yeah, I think in the interesting piece there is the companies who are in a position where they can just keep pushing forward are already the largest companies in the world, which means that you are essentially going to just further entrench those large companies, because they're the ones who can just make the deals and pay out the money and do the whatever. It's not even just about who has the capability of building out the infrastructure. It's who's big enough to absorb the hit that's coming from doing this. And that just means that I think that will fundamentally shape this in a different direction than if it was possible for really interesting startups. Like, I think it's good that there was OpenAI and Anthropic and Perplexity and all these different things, but I think we're going to get down to like there's OpenAI, there's Gemini, and maybe whatever Apple has, and obviously Llama from Meta. That's it. Right.
Yeah, I agree. All right, last couple quick things before we talk about Mac desktops. But Google also has a privacy class action lawsuit about the syncing of data. Court of Appeals in San Francisco This is a little confusing.
Yeah,
but
so basically, let me help you out here.
Yeah, please.
Essentially, Google was basically saying that if you were not logged in to like Google, that none of your personal information was being used. But Chrome was actually collecting personal information without people's permission, even if you weren't logged in. And because they were choosing, please don't sync my personal information with the browser with my Google account.
Right.
But it turned out that Chrome was doing that anyway. And actually, I think I wrote about a while ago, Google basically said, we're going to delete all that information that we collected without permission. But now, and at the time, I think it was like 2020, maybe they dismissed a case against them. But the federal court or the appeals court has actually just said, nope, we're going to reinstate this case, this class action lawsuit, and we're going to actually let this go through the process to see like whether or not whether this was a violation of law. Obviously, Google disagrees. But I think that it's like, because this was actually like Google agreed to do that as a part of a settlement with this to make the stuff go away. But the plaintiffs were like, no, we think this should go forward. And again, I think there's never been a more apropos time for Eric Schmidt's quote, because he would have been the CEO. It's like, we're just going to do it. We're literally just going to do what we want, and then we will hire the lawyers to clean up the mess. And this is one of those messes.
And this was also in light of the previous case about incognito mode, where there was a lawsuit because even in incognito mode, Google's, tracking all the data and keeping track of it. So, there's that. All right, last two things I just want to get to quickly. These are more humorous than anything. I just thought. Apparently, Microsoft Teams app was updated, and you have a new single app for personal and work uses. And I just have to say, who out there is using Microsoft Teams for any personal use? Who would do it? Who?
I don't even understand. I feel like I'm a pretty informed tech person, and I've heard people talk about this before. I don't even understand, how is it possible that there were two different apps that you'd have to have, right? Like, let's just grant that there might be somebody who has a book club, and for whatever reason, the person who started the book club had a Microsoft account and was like, oh, Teams is free. Let's just use that or whatever. Right. But they would have had to download a separate app and do, like, I don't even understand. Like, what?
I don't know.
Like, imagine if Slack was like, well, you can have Slack over here for your book club, and then you have to download a different Slack for your work. Like, this should have been what happened, but like, I don't understand how we got to this point, Steven. This makes no sense.
I don't know, but also, it's funny. I see on social media a number of people on TikTok. They were like, my company just moved us from Gmail to Outlook, and it's people reacting, like crying and just hating life. And it's like, it's funny how the sentiment is about Outlook and Office 365, especially from like younger demographics. And like, I get it from the enterprise perspective. Like, you're going to buy Office, Outlook is right there. Like, it can power your email. Like, you have everything in the box, so to speak. Which, I mean, Google Workplace can too if you want to use Google Docs, which I think a lot of probably maybe older school companies are like, I want an app on my computer to do my Word documenting. That might be why they lean more towards Microsoft, and also just like the name and longevity of Microsoft having been doing it forever. But yeah, I wish Teams on no one. No one should have to use Teams.
Speaking of which, you just mentioned something we'll have to talk about a different time, but I just moved my personal domain from my personal email domain from Microsoft Outlook to Google. It was not any easier, Stephen. Gmail is weird.
You should have gone to Fastmail. I should have. That's what I did.
Fastmail.
Why wouldn't you go to Fastmail?
Why would? But I mean, I needed it doesn't matter, but all I'm going to say is Gmail is weird because you cannot take an archive of emails that you have saved, if you have I can move all of my old Outlook email. I can open the Apple Mail app and I can just drag all those emails into a folder on my iCloud server and I have them forever.
Right.
You can't your Gmail. I cannot have all my old email in my new Gmail account because you can't upload. It's not IMAP. You can't upload things to the Gmail server in your email inbox.
Interesting.
It's just impossible. It's just the most weird thing ever. I'm sorry, we don't have to digress. But
I should have gone with fast mail.
Listen, it was harder than getting a washing machine or a refrigerator, and you know how I feel about those things.
You had some bad experiences. That is true. That is true. All right, the last thing before Mac Desktop, I just want to point out that Waymo. I'd love for this to just be an ongoing bit, because we talked about self-driving cars many episodes ago and how ridiculous the Waymo cars were. Well, they have a new model of the Waymo. This is the 6th generation system. It has, I think, more discrete sensors and cameras. It's almost more like a minivan style rather than a car.
Instead of wearing a crown, it looks like a party bus. Are those speakers on the outside? It looks like that thing's going to drive down the street and break your windows.
Just bumping music.
Yeah.
But yeah, new Waymo car. I think it's already on the road, apparently, in select routes. But yeah, self-driving cars, Jason. Full self-driving cars.
Yeah,
I say that just to
trying.
make them mad.
They're still trying.
What is the level? What are the levels again? Is it like levels 1 through 6?
I think
for
5. I thought 5 was.
Oh, is it 5?
I think so.
And 5 is like.
We should all stay in our houses because the robotaxis have taken over the world.
Okay, that's level 5 is the Terminator robot. Okay,
I was gonna think iRobot, but yeah, basically.
Oh yeah, right, the iRobot. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, new robo taxis, full self-driving, sort of, kind of. Anyway, okay, Mac Desktop. Here's my question, Jason. This is the personal tech segment. If you go to your,
I appreciate you clarifying that for everyone.
I just want to clarify. When you go to the Finder preferences, and you can decide, I think it's Finder settings, you could do the show these items on desktop. And then you have 4 options. You have hard disks, external disks, CDs, DVDs, and iPods. I didn't know that was still a setting. That's amazing. And then connected servers. Those are your 4 options to show things on your Mac desktop in perpetuity. What do you have checked there?
Hard disks, external disks, and I also have the iPods one checked. I'm not sure why. CDs, DVDs, and iPods. I have no CD drive, no DVD drive, and I do have an iPod sitting back there, but I have not connected it to this computer for.
It won't work. It won't sync. It won't sync. Yeah.
So So my impetus for this question was I wanted to know, like, how do you use your desktop? Do you just put everything on your desktop and just leave crap there? Do you use it as like a temporary holding space? Do you never put anything on your desktop? What folders permanently live on your desktop, if any? That's what I was curious. Nothing? So it's just blank?
That's correct. Well, so the things I have checked in that item list, I have CDs, DVDs, and iPods checked, even though I never put any of those in my computer.
Clearly that's a default.
Right. I uncheck hard disks and external disks because I have multiple external disks for like my video files, and it would basically be 4 drives on the desktop, and I ain't doing that. So I have those unchecked. The only thing I have checked is connected servers, because I do have a Synology NAS that I will connect to. And if it's not connected for whatever reason, because there was like a power blip or something, I want to know if it's connected or not. And I do access that pretty often. So I actually keep the connected servers checked. But other than that, I try to keep nothing on my desktop. You know, if I take a screenshot, it does save to the desktop, but I'll probably quickly drag that wherever I need to, and then it's gone. And if I ever need to hold a file for a couple days for whatever reason, I will put it in the downloads folder, and I use my downloads folder as like my inbox, I guess, of files on the Mac, because I clean the downloads folder constantly. Like any document that's there is because I actually have to do something with it, and once I'm done, like, it's gone. Now, sometimes if it's a document like an Amazon return, so I need to return something to Amazon, and so I have like the label, the QR code that UPS is going to scan, I'll leave it on my desktop just so I can access it on my phone when I walk into UPS, and then that's it. But other than that, 0 folders, 0 stuff. I don't play around.
Yeah, so permanently I have the Macintosh hard drive icon and a Dropbox folder. And generally there's nothing else unless there's a thing. So like, for example, this recording will end up on my desktop. my audio hijack recording will end up on my desktop, and then I'll put it where I want it, right? Like, but I do not want to dig through things to figure out like where things go. And the only things that end up in my downloads folder are literally things I've downloaded, mostly from an app that, again, we probably can't talk about because it's YouTube. And so those things will end up in my downloads folder, and then I move them where I want them. But everything else, I just like, okay, I did a thing, I put it on my desktop, and then I put it from there to where I want it to go. So there are like times when I'll accumulate 6 or 7 things on my desktop, and then, but they always get cleared out by like either the beginning of the day or whatever. Yeah. I do have, when I have hard drives mounted, I do have them show up on my desktop. My main reason for that is that's my cue, so I remember that they're there. Right now, you have like on my laptop, it's like I need to know that I have a bunch of hard drives connected right now, so that if I yank this cord out of the side of my thing, I need to make sure I unmount them first. Right? And I do have a shortcut that will do that for me. That's like one of 2 shortcuts I've ever built in my life. Is one that will unmount all of my drives. But I still need to know that they're connected. So having them on my having them on my desktop is like my visual reminder. Oh yeah, there's some things you should take care of. Also, I just like treat my desktop as like the Grand Central Station, and it's like I just go there to click. I don't ever like open Finder to go to Dropbox. I just click on the Dropbox icon on my desktop. But but about screenshots, don't you just have a screenshots folder in my desktop, and that's where CleanShot puts everything. I don't put any of that stuff on my desktop.
So I use CleanShot for my video recording, my screen recordings, and those go into a folder. I actually use the movies folder and have a screen recording folder there to save those video files because they're large and I don't want them syncing to the cloud. And so I don't put it on the desktop or documents, because I think we should say I have my iCloud desktop and documents folder syncing to iCloud, which I assume. Do you?
No.
Oh, see that. I think that changes a lot how you use the desktop, because like when you said your audio hijack is recording to your desktop, like I would never do that if my desktop was syncing to iCloud, because I have found like for recordings or anything lengthy like that, where like it's writing to the destination constantly, iCloud like could screw that up so easily, because it'll try to start syncing a file to the cloud while it's still being
I just
created.
don't do that. I used to do that. I just don't do. There's too many problems. I think the ATP guys talked about this a month or so ago about why you should just never ever ever do that. And I had already turned it off, so I felt really good about myself in that moment.
Really?
But yeah, you're right. It's just janky, and there's like opportunities to lose things. And if somehow I don't know, there's just weird sync states. And so I've turned that off completely.
No, see, I have it on, and I use my documents folder as pretty much like 90% of my work files. Like my documents folder is where everything lives, so it syncs to iCloud. And that's why like when I wanted to downgrade my MacBook Pro from Sequoia back to Sonoma, like I didn't even have to think about, are there any files I need to get off? Because my desktop is clear, there's nothing in my downloads folder, and everything I work with is in the documents folder. And so I could just reset it, and I know iCloud Drive is going to sync everything. But I do use the movies folder because that doesn't sync to iCloud for those screen recordings. For audio hijack recordings, my audio files go there. And if I have renders, I will do those to the movies folder on my Mac Studio, and then I move those to my Synology. And once I'm done uploading and doing whatever with them, and then I delete them from the movies folder. But yeah, I don't put much on the desktop.
Well, and I do the exact same thing. I just do it in Dropbox. I like literally everything goes in Dropbox. Everything is in Dropbox. I don't use the documents folder. The only thing that's in there is an Adobe folder. And I don't even know it's in it, and just because I probably can't get rid of it. Like Adobe, just like it's like a cancer.
It'll yell at you.
It's like a cancer. Yeah. It's just like lung cancer, and it just keeps metastasizing throughout your system. So everything is just in Dropbox, and I like iCloud. Like I don't have a problem with iCloud Drive. In fact, I do use it sometimes if I want to quickly get something on like my phone. I can put it in the iCloud Drive, and then I can access it. But Dropbox is like 17 trillion times faster and more reliable than iCloud. And so it's just like I've literally never had a failure with Dropbox once.
I still pay for my Dropbox account, and I did use it as my main cloud syncing for many years. But I have found sharing stuff is still cumbersome and not great, like sharing a folder with iCloud Drive. But just for my personal use, that documents folder, I found it to actually be really solid, and things sync very fast. So like if I export a podcast file from Ferrite, so I'm exporting the edit for this show, Ferrite on my iPad, I'll save it to a folder in my documents folder. It's like buried many layers deep. It syncs to my Mac in like seconds, and I can upload it to Transistor, our host, from my Mac because it's synced via the iCloud like in seconds. So I've actually found it to be pretty fast and reliable, and I've not lost any files from iCloud Drive syncing. So it's like I don't have Dropbox on my computer. I still have my account because I have a bunch of files and I just want to keep it there. It's kind of like a backup. But yeah, iCloud Drive, I use it a lot. I use that thing.
That's not where I thought we were going to go with this, but there we went.
Yeah, went to a strange place. We're going to go to one more place. We're going to talk about conferences for a few minutes. If you want to listen to that bonus episode and get an ad-free version of the show, you can support us at primarytech.fm and click bonus episodes, or support us directly in Apple Podcasts. And you can even do it on the web now if you're on Windows or an Android device, and you get those bonus episodes. You get the whole back catalog when you start supporting us now. And you can even do a free trial either on primarytech.fm or directly on Apple Podcasts. And you can also watch the show at youtube.com/@primarytechshow. All those links are in the show notes, as well as a link to 1Password, our